This video is sponsored by Full Reptile Collective, brought to you by Dan Hardy. Head over to their website at fullreptile.co.uk where you can find anything from training gear, t-shirts, hoodies, all the way to coffee. For an exclusive 10% off, use Dan Said So at checkout. Make sure to also check out their YouTube channel for some of the best MMA content out there, bar my own. Let's get back to the video. But yeah, you happy? Doesn't need to be any interview kind of stage, mate. I already know enough. So I was gonna say, let's use you for what you're the master at, which is breaking down fights and fights that maybe other people are kind of ignoring in the community, because most people focus on UFC, which got to mention UFC London and maybe two fights if you have time. But there was a major fight I really want to talk about as a one championship fan, which was Rodtang and Demetrious Johnson.
Yep.
Which is I found out today it is 3-minute rounds.
Yes.
It's not because I was thinking, are they going to do it 5-minute rounds for the MMA side, or because it's rounds 2 and 4 at MMA and 1 and 3 are Muay Thai.
Yes.
Which is scary for DJ in my head, because I've loved watching Rodtang from the fights I've actually found over the years, because I think he joined one at 18 years old.
Yeah.
And I thought he was about 40 because all the Thai guys just look so old and weathered.
I think when you turn pro at 8, you age a lot faster than most people do.
Yeah, and he's got like 350 fights or something like that. It's something ridiculous. So, yeah, I was going to get your thoughts on what you think, whether it's as simple as it's a round 1 kind of thing for Rodtang and he has no chance in round 2, or Demetrious has no chance in round 1, because that's how it's kind of been played out by the media, essentially like DJ's just going to get KO'd. But I don't think it's that simple for him.
It's not at all that simple. But I mean, so it's an interesting situation because, of course, you know, it's a unique circumstance where they're alternating rounds. I mean, we've seen it a couple of times before. I think K1 used to do it. I think Bob Sapp and Jerome Labana did boxing gloves to MMA gloves, and they were switching gloves between rounds and stuff. But this is interesting because, of course, you know, they're going to keep the small gloves on. You know, Rodtang's been fighting in a cage in small gloves, fighting Muay Thai, but that doesn't mean this is going to be anything like what he's faced before. I actually spoke to one championship the other day to kind of get some clarification on what's going on, because initially, what it says on Tapology is that it's 5 3-minute rounds, but they're not. They're doing 4 rounds of 3 minutes. First one being Muay Thai, as you said, third one being Muay Thai. But then I keep thinking to myself, the logical thing is that, okay, DJ survives the first round, second round comes out, he takes Rodtang down, takes his back and chokes him out. And I think, to be honest, that's what's most likely going to happen. But with the first round being Muay Thai, and with the first round being Muay Thai, and with DJ not being a particularly fast worker, you know, you go back to when he was in the UFC, a lot of the time he was beating guys up over 25 minutes. And even when he is taking guys down, he's not subbing them under 3 minutes. You know, it's taking him a longer time to control them and to break them down. Of course, he has great submissions. And I think that, you know, once it hits the floor, Rodtang is in seriously deep water. But if he's training correctly and doing what he needs to survive, then he gets back into the third round and it's Muay Thai again. But then this is in a cage, and that doesn't suit Rodtang because his footwork isn't great for the circle. Like, it's ideal for the ring. You know, you watch him when he fought Haggerty. He's very good at cutting people down, forcing them against the ropes. But when he fights in a ring, in the circle, it's not quite the same. You know, and a lot of the guys that he's fighting, they're Muay Thai fighters. So they play at the same range that Rodtang's familiar with. But you think how much DJ moves, how much he goes in and out of range, and he's switching his stance, and he's just not going to be there to play Muay Thai with Rodtang, which is going to make the first round really difficult for him. Like, Rodtang's going to find himself frustrated that he's not getting the Muay Thai fight that he wants. Yeah. And then second round comes out, and I expect DJ to close him down pretty quickly and ground him. And then, you know, it's a case of seeing what Rodtang's learned in a very short period of time. My concern was, I saw him on his Instagram the other day working ground and pound. And that is a poor investment, because the chance of him being on top is almost as slim as DJ standing in the pocket and trading Muay Thai with him.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's an interesting one, but I think it's the general consensus is that, you know, Rodtang's got the advantage in the first round that DJ's not going to play into. And then in the second and the fifth and the fourth round, it's all about Demetrious trying to choke him out as quickly as possible. It's an interesting one. I think there are certain things that favour one side over the other. I think the circle, that favours DJ most definitely. I think the small gloves favour DJ as well. I think the way that it's laid out supports DJ as well, because he's not a fast starter, and Rodtang's going to be trying to chase him down in that first round. And if that overspills into the second, then it's going to be much easier to take him down. I don't know how much Rodtang is doing to offset the disadvantages in the second and the fourth round. That's my concern for him. And if he's doing ground and pound from the top, that's not a good investment of his time.
Yeah, because his style as well is march forward, hands up, and his front kicks and his push kicks are how he gets people into the cage, where he actually can unleash the power shots as he does. But he's also a 125er and a small 125er, and DJ's been fighting at 135 at one. And against Morales, he was massive, which is I know he's been KO'd, but if in the second round he comes out and he does his marching style, it's going to be an easy takedown, very easy. If he's investing his time on top, he's getting subbed very quickly, because all he should be doing is getting up. That's literally it. But the only thing I was thinking of was scorecards, because in Muay Thai, you get a knockdown, that's a 10-8 straight away. So if he knocks DJ down in round one and survives round two, suddenly he's up, going into the third round. And I'm just thinking, if he could survive, theoretically, he could get 10-9'd both in the second and fourth, but win via decision. Because I'm not sure how it is. If it's even going into all four rounds, there's just going to be a draw, shortly. I'm assuming they're banking on it not going the distance.
Well, I mean, you would think that, but then this is another bit where there's some confusion, because the way that the judges score kickboxing and Muay Thai in one is different to the way they score MMA. So in the kickboxing and Muay Thai fights, they score per round. So, you can win round, lose a round, win a round, lose a round. But when they score in the MMA fights, they score them as a whole. So it's actually down to who's closest to finish the fight. So say if Rodtang knocks him down in the first round and then DJ takes him down and almost guillotines him in the second, they both kind of even each other out. And if they're judging it as a whole, when we get to the end of the, 12 minutes, like it could be a very, very difficult decision to make. And it could be down to how heavily you score striking or submissions. I think it's going to be very difficult for Rodtang to hurt DJ. I think it's going to be difficult.
That was my next question. Do you think he can even hurt him? Yeah.
It's not. I think he could hurt him if this was a Muay Thai fight and they were fighting in a phone box. Then absolutely, Rodtang's going to really hurt him, because his knees, his elbows, and his low kicks are a problem. But he has to make sure DJ's within range before he starts throwing them, and that's the game that DJ's not going to play. He's going to be changing that distance between them so often that Rodtang's going to feel like he's just chasing him for the whole time. And again, it's in a circle. You don't have corners, so you can't force somebody into a corner and trap them. And there's more surface area on the canvas in a circle as well, which gives DJ more space to move. And if the frustration spills over into the second round, like you said, he's a walk you down kind of fighter. It's going to be easier to take him down.
I've never seen him take a back step in any fight. Even the Haggerty fight, Haggerty was front body kicking him all day, and he cut him to the rope. And as you say, he uses the ropes as the advantage, and he caught him with that clean right. So, and what does DJ do best? Move. That's what he does. He's Mighty Mouse for a reason. He moves so fast. Yeah. So what would your prediction be? Would you go with the majority right now, just saying it's a DJ sub?
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if DJ takes him down, mounts him, and arm bars him in the first or second round, because I think he's also going to bank on the fact that Rodtang's going to be doing a lot of like neck defense stuff, because that's the most likely way to attack him. Yeah. Wouldn't surprise me if DJ goes for one of those fantastic arm bars that he got. Like, was it Ray Borg that he got in the last second? Yeah, like we know he's got that potential. It's a very interesting circumstance. I actually would prefer it if it was over 5 rounds, so we got first, third, and fifth being Muay Thai, because then I think that influences the fight much more into an even playing field. Whereas even just 2 for 2, I think it favors DJ still.
Yeah, essentially you're giving one martial art to the whole other, the Venn diagrams of martial arts. DJ's kind of winning in the rules set.
He's covered all the way through, and in the rounds where he doesn't have the advantage to be able to grapple, then he just won't. He won't. He's not going to stand there and take low kicks off Rodtang. He's going to be switching his stance. He's going to be moving in and out of range. It's going to be a really difficult test for Rodtang to try and apply Muay Thai to an MMA fighter.
Yeah. No, I'm with you 100% as well. I think it's a Demetrious. I think it's quite easy stylistically, and that's the only reason. But I would like to see Rodtang actually take an MMA fight eventually, because
Yeah,
he's done almost everything in the game in Muay Thai at 24 years old. Like in today's world, anyway, especially with one championship, he's had I think 19 fights since the Haggerty fight already. Like,
yeah. I mean, the guys, he endlessly impresses me every time he steps in there. You know, his gameness and his technical ability, as well as his willingness to, you know, just put himself in danger to win fights. I just, if you're gonna, I mean, this is of course a mixed rules fight, so there is a you know an attraction for Rodtang to make this his kind of MMA style debut, but.
yeah.
You could put him in there against some other guys that are on the one championship roster in full MMA rules, and I think Rodtang has a fairly decent shot at them. You know, it's you just, I mean, there's thrown in at the deep end, and then there's making your MMA style debut against one of the best in the world, and that's where he's, you know, that's where it's going to be an unrealistic expectation of him to do well.
Yeah, there was easier opponents to pick other than DJ.
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. Another fight did want to talk about. I know we don't have time. I would love to go through the whole card with you of UFC London, but we don't have 2 hours. So the next fight I wanted to talk about was Arnold Allen's fight against Dan Hooker. I spoke to John Gooden about how Dan Hooker prepares. Old Johnny G's, as you call him. So Hooker obviously cutting down weight again. John said he's an ever professional. Like, he will make the weight no problem. I'm sure he'll be fine. I know he fought at this weight about 6 or 7 years ago, but getting used to not having to cut an extra. He already looked shredded. He already looked like he had no more to give. That's my worry in this, because Arnold makes the weight not no problem, but he's a big guy for the weight still. But he's physically, from a genetic, you know, his dad. How do you get that size? Arnold said, "Get your dad to take steroids and have a baby." So it's, you know, he's a genetic freak on its own. But the fight, to me, I have no idea how to look at this fight, because Arnold's stand-up is getting better and better every time you see him. Dan Hooker has got very good neck attacks, but is known as a kickboxer. And to me, they kind of mirror each other, but with just a giant reach advantage for Dan Hooker in this. Your take on how Hooker kind of approaches it, being definitely the bigger guy.
I think he's going to want to strike with Arnold Allen. I think he's going to want to make the most of that reach advantage that he has. You know, the one thing that I think Hooker will have in mind is that, you know, he is cut into featherweight for the first time in a long while, and he is traveling a long way to get to the venue. So, you know, traveling around the world, it causes all kinds of water retention issues with travel within your body. So you have to make sure that your diet and your nutrition, your electrolytes are on point, and also that you're properly fully hydrated while you travel. Because if you're not, then you start to retain water, and that makes it even more difficult to cut. On the flip side, Arnold Allen will drive to the venue. You know, he'll drive to the venue. He'll know exactly where to go for his you know, his electrolytes and his whatever else he needs post weigh-in. So they've really stacked the odds against Dan Hooker coming into this. You know, they could have made it easier for him by, you know, having him out of the Performance Institute and fighting at the Apex. You know, if they really wanted to invest in Dan Hooker as a featherweight, then, you know, they would have made his life a bit easier. I think this is a big ask to have him travel around the world and to fight someone like Arnold Allen, who is, you know, improving by the second. He's a physical specimen. He's got great head movement, great technical striking, and we all know he can attack a neck as well. And one thing that happens when you go down weight classes is that your neck gets longer and skinnier. And, you know, Dan Hooker's already a long, skinny individual. You know, you think back to the Barbosa fight. He took an absolute beating in that, and yeah, he looked taller and longer, but he looked weaker. Yeah. And my concern is that he's going to look weak in this fight, especially compared to Arnold Allen, who, as we know, is a physical specimen. This could be very much a coming out party for Arnold Allen, and a very rough introduction to featherweight for Dan Hooker.
Yeah, and the gas tank's never a problem either for Arnold. So, you know, he's got power. He nearly, you know, if Yusuf didn't have a concrete head, and I think Hooker actually Arnold actually broke his hand, didn't he? That's why he's off for quite a while. He could have easily finished that fight 3 times. You know, knocked him down 3 times. So he's definitely got power there. You know, he's training back in Ipswich at the moment, I believe. So his try starts down, but, you know, he's got a good corner team. He's got everything is perfect. He's never out of shape either. I know he eats
No.
meal deals and goes on about that, but that's about, that's as far as out of the diet it goes for him, it seems. So no, I'm glad. I think Arnold coming out party is probably right, but
Yeah.
after this, it's the biggest of the biggest boys, isn't it?
Yeah, well, this is it. This is what Dan
got
Hooker
the
does.
years.
Yeah, I mean, you get a win over someone like Dan Hooker, and then doors start opening because that's a big name on your record that you can use as a promotional tool around the world. Everyone knows who Dan Hooker is from headlining fights, and he's his war with Paul Felder. Just an absolute stud of a fighter. But he's a tall individual already, and he's now going down another weight class and fighting someone who is very, very physically well proportioned and well conditioned. And the one win that always stands out in my mind for Arnold Allen, and I know it's from a while ago, but it's the Mads Bennell submission, because Bennell is an excellent neck attacker, and he's an excellent boxer, and he was able to walk Arnold Allen down in that fight and outbox him for a large parts of the fight, but then ended up getting caught in that ninja choke. You can never count Arnold Allen out. He didn't take any real damage in that fight. He was just on the back foot. So his ability to kind of absorb the best that Dan Hooker throws at him and then start to turn the fight around late second, early third. I could see him finishing Dan Hooker. Again, use his gas tank against him, push him, make him work, make him grapple, make him scramble, make him defend his neck. You're going to test his gas tank. You're going to test his weight cut at the same time. It's a good opportunity for Arnold Allen for sure.
Do you think the power is going to translate for Hooker coming down in weight? Because he knocked out Gilbert Burns. He's got some proper good power at that division. But I really worry about the weight cut. I really do.
Power's something for Dan Hooker that it's not like a natural thing. Like he's not like a naturally very heavy-handed fighter. Like when he knocks people out, it's because he's caught them right and he's got good technique while he's doing it. And all of those things, it's like, having the perfect knockout punch when you're not a big puncher is like finding that Goldilocks zone for the technique. It's finding the right moment, the right opportunity. All those things are affected by a big weight cut. So it really depends on what he looks like on the scales. He might look really, really good in the first round, and then the second round he might get off his stool and look half dead. Yeah. And that's where he's no longer really a threat to Arnold Allen, and it could all be about his weight cut. And if I'm Arnold Allen, I'm paying close attention to him. I'm being patient in the first round, and I'm making him work safely as much as I can, clinching him, grappling with him, making him expend energy that he probably doesn't want to do for the whole 15 minutes.
Yeah, I have a feeling that's what the Hooker camp are going to be saying. Be patient as well. Take your time, and it might be a stalemate for the first round. What do you call it for Max? Like downloading data almost. It's
that's it. Yeah. See, it works better for Max because he almost always has 5 rounds to do it. And it's not until the losses to Volkanovski where he really started to pick up his pace. The pace that he put on Kattar from the first round was different, but he still can maintain for 5 rounds. I don't know about the same situation with Hooker. I think he can fight hard over 5 rounds at 155, but that starts to drop off. Zabit, he's kind of fallen off the face of the planet. But the question around him was that what's he going to look like over 5 rounds? And we've never seen it, because even when he was supposed to be fighting over 5 rounds, he pushed for it to be 3. And I think he knows that his style is finite over 3 rounds. Going up to 155, Zabit might be much better. But we might see the opposite from Hooker going down.
Yeah, I think 2 rounds for Zabit.
Yeah, exactly.
Kattar and Karl Bochniak, wasn't it? Karl Bochniak pushed the pace in that. That's one of my favourite fights I've ever seen in my life, that one.
Brilliant. And the Kattar one's a great example, because you look at that and you go, well, this should have been 5 rounds because it was main event. If it was 5 rounds, probably Kattar would have taken it, because he was coming on strong. Zabit was clearly tired. It's interesting. The extra 10 minutes changes everything, and then weight classes as well. This is a good one that it's over 3 rounds for Dan Hooker, but the weight cut is going to be horrendous, I'm sure.
Good co-main event for this card as well.
Definitely.
But, the main event, which is the big boys, which I was shocked when I saw this because of all the Tom Aspinall. I want to take it easy. I want to take it slow, and all of a sudden Alexander Volkov gets dropped on your lap, and he said, "I can't turn it down." This is a fight. Volkov, the nearly man, I want to call him. He seems to get to that last hurdle, and always fall. You know, he beats the guys ranked maybe 8 to 15, no problem. The Tyburas, the Harrises. I'm not going to mention Greg Hardy, but like all the rest of them. He had a really good run before he faced Derek Lewis for the first time, and he was beating Derek Lewis for pretty much 15 minutes until the last 10 seconds. He got kind of exposed to me with how he's not Stefan Struve in the fact that he likes to fight in the pocket, but he doesn't use the range to full effect. And that's always a worry for me when you've got someone that like 6'8", 6'7", 80-inch reach plus, and they bend, you know, they're fighting like this instead of like this. And that to me is a big worry, especially with Tom, because Tom is, how do they do it in jiu-jitsu? You got the green zone and the red zone, haven't you? You know, you want to be furthest away or closest as possible. And Tom is exactly that. He's never there to be hit. He's always here or he's always here. And he's got excellent submissions. He doesn't panic. And when he couldn't finish Arlovsky, he went, okay, he's got a concrete brain. I can't finish him. I'm just going to take him down. It was the easiest decision of his life. And he didn't even have to get a hook. He just grabbed his neck. The intelligence levels here for Tom and Volkov, I think, are going to favour Tom massively. I don't know. The only issue for me is it too big a step too quickly for him? Because we haven't seen him go, 3 rounds. We haven't even seen him go to a decision, even in his Cage Warriors days. When I saw him live, Cage Warriors, he's just, he's leg kicking people to death. Just, he's too good. So do you think this is almost the perfect fight for him? Because he was scheduled to face a Bubakar, wasn't it, on this card? Who's now facing... Oh, who's he facing? Who's the other guy? But yeah, do you think it's the perfect test for Volkov, or do you think it's the perfect test for Tom at this point?
I think it is a big step up for sure, but I also think it's quite a forgiving opponent in a lot of ways, because Volkov is one of the taller fighters in the division. When he fought Struve, he looked like the taller fighter in there because, as you said, Struve likes to fight in close. And I think Volkov used that against him very well. He was able to manage the range and distance really nicely. He did the same thing against Walt Harris. Those front kicks to the midsection were vicious. And I think that if Volkov's able to play a long-range fight and Tom takes a bit of while to get started, then he could find himself stifled and on the end of those shots. And if I'm Volkov, I'm thinking to myself, okay, he's not done 5 rounds. He's largely unproven in the later rounds, which is where I want to push him. And Volkov is a long-range fighter, a long range in the sense of his reach and his height, but also long range as in he's quite happy to use 25 minutes to beat you. And he will slowly dismantle you. He's not in any kind of rush to finish. He has got a lot of finishes on his record, but of recent years, he has a lot more decision wins. He's outpointing guys, which is forgiven in the sense that it will give Tom plenty of time to put his foot on the gas and make an impact. But at the same time, he's not going to be getting in there and, putting it on Tom and really blasting him out of there, which is quite forgiving in some ways. Like, imagine if they'd have given him Derek Lewis, that could be a very, very different fight, but not nearly as forgiving, because at any moment you can get caught. I don't think that Volkov presents that same kind of threat. He's technically very good and he has got some finishing capability, but it's nothing that's going to happen in a split second and take Tom by surprise. And Tom's got great footwork and great movement. He's going to be able to move in and out of range on Volkov and nullify that reach advantage. And because, Volkov's going to be aware that Tom can ground him and can use grappling as well to test him, it's going to make Volkov a bit more respectful of Tom, I think. His speed, his athleticism, and his well-roundedness. Usually Volkov is dealing with someone and he knows where he beats them. He knows he beats Walt Harris in the striking range, and Walt Harris is probably not going to be able to take him down. He knows Derek Lewis is looking for that one big, massive shot. And as long as he stays away from it, he's all right. I mean, he wasn't able to, but the point still stands. I think there's going to be a long window of opportunity here for Tom to find his moment. And as long as he doesn't get outpointed in the first couple of rounds and get discouraged, I think it's a great opportunity for him. Volkov is that litmus test for the top 5, in my opinion. If you get through Volkov, you're like, okay, this guy's going to contend for a belt at some point in the future. It's a great opportunity for Tom. Everything I've heard coming out of him, he's very confident. He's very, very realistic about what he's up against. But I don't think at any point he's going to feel like he's outmatched by Volkov.
Do you think it's a fair assessment to say he's very similar to Cyril Gane in movement, as Volkov really struggled with Cyril's movement in that, the darting in and out, not quite karate, but it's that kind of point fighting, dart in, hit 1-2s, back out, get out of range again, work the low kicks. And again, lateral movement was so key in that fight. Every time Volkov, stepped forward, plodding forward almost, marching forward, just wasn't even there. Just, okay, had to reset. And again, it's not, it took him completely out of his comfort zone. But I like to call Tom Cyril Gane with jiu-jitsu. So, because that is effectively what he is to me. He's the fastest heavyweight by a country mile from what I've seen. I think he unloaded about 25 punches against Arlovsky when he hurt him. Different standard of opponent here. Obviously, he's not going to get a chance to unload 25 punches, I think, against Volkov. But the power is definitely there. He's got the killer instinct. I don't think someone like Cyril does. Cyril kind of like cruises. He gets into second gear, doesn't he? Just try and takes it all the way. Whereas Tom, oh, you're hurt. I'm going to finish you. Done. He sees red and he's like, okay, I can get him out of here. I'm not going to let it go that far if I don't have to. But to me, yeah, if it hits the deck, I don't see how Tom is, his dad runs the jiu-jitsu program down at Calvin, doesn't he? So he's been doing that. That's his bread and butter, even though he likes to stand and bang. So it's so hard for me I'm trying to be so unbiased because there's so many English fighters. But when I look down the card, I'm like, English wins, Scottish wins, English wins, all the whole way through. So, but I'm just trying to think of ways that if I was Volkov, how I would exploit Tom. And the only way I can think of is keeping at range and pity patter him. Because as soon as you set yourself up for that big shot, Volkov, again, doesn't use the range for the big shot. He steps in and Tom's in. And that almost how you can get into Derek Lewis's range. You step in, he's then got the range to just explode on you. He doesn't have to do anything. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I mean, Cyril Gane's a good fighter to liken him to in some ways, but I would say he's somewhere between Cyril Gane and Derek Lewis, given the fact that he's got the movement and technical ability, but he has also got the heavy hands. So if he does want to put somebody away, he can. Now, the difference is Cyril doesn't ever commit real power to his shots, which means that he's never committed to being in range and staying there to get counter shots. So he is in and out, and he is very kind of light and fleet-footed, which was very difficult for Volkov. Yeah. If Aspinall could replicate that kind of movement and force Volkov to kind of plod forward and chase him, then the moments where Tom steps in, he can either pepper him with a couple of light shots and move, or he can step in and really crack him with something hard. So he'll be able to do it as quick as Cyril did, but also as maybe not quite as powerful as Derek Lewis, but certainly fight-ending power in those punches. So I honestly think that this is I mean, I think Tom's a more well-rounded threat than Cyril. I think what Cyril is good at, he's very, very good at, and I don't think Tom is probably as fleet-footed as Cyril. He is quick and he does have fast hands, but I think he foregoes some of that technical point fighting style to add a bit of power to his game. And honestly, I think that's a benefit to him anyway. It's just, I mean, this is a big step up. Volkov's got a massive amount of experience. He's fought UFC vets all the way through his career. But then every time we've seen Tom step in there, it's like, oh, we're going to need somebody else. These guys aren't good enough, Like when he broke Sofian Bukchu's leg in Cage Warriors, like the big overwhelming disappointment was like, oh, we kind of need to see him fight a bit longer. It's like we're always a little bit unfulfilled because we never see him get tested. It's a good thing because he's cruising through the division comfortably, but the bad point is that we don't know. We've not seen him rally. We've not seen him struggle yet. And someone like Volkov could potentially put him in those circumstances. So it's a big test, a huge test. But main event in London. He's fighting a guy that everybody knows. This is going to be a real celebration for Tom Aspinall, and he's just a very calm, mature individual. He's got a real strong mindset. And as you said, his dad's been coaching him grappling since he was a kid. He's got Colin Heron there with him all the time. He's been sparring with Tyson Fury. There's a lot of good things in Tom Aspinall's camp and in his life at the moment. And this is a great, great chance for him to introduce himself to the top of the division.
So I'm assuming you're picking Tom in it as well.
I am picking Tom, yeah. But I mean, I can be a little bit biased now because I won't be sitting octagon side. So I can enjoy it more as a fan. And I do, I am rooting for Tom because, he is a great guy. He is a great well-rounded mixed martial artist, and we very, very rarely see good guys coming out of the UK at heavyweight and doing well. You know, like Tom may be one of these guys that can bring a belt back to the UK in at some point in the next couple of years. You know, the heavyweight division's really tough, but if he figures out and solves the problem of Volkov, that's something that most people in the division can't do, and that will certainly make people pay attention. Like, that's when you start moving him on to the likes of Curtis Blades or Derek Lewis afterwards, and that's really when it starts to get serious for Tom.
Yeah, perfect. How long have you got? Because
I got a few more minutes. I got another 5 minutes or so, and I got to shoot.
Okay. I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions. I won't. No time for obviously more breakdowns and stuff, but thank you for that. Have you seen Smeela Sundell?
No.
Okay. It was. I've just found out about her a few days ago. She's a one championship 17-year-old Thai boxer. Okay. Just someone to go, because I know what you're like from watching. You're gonna obsess now over this young lady.
I will, absolutely.
Yeah. Smeela Sundell, Smilla.
Okay.
She fought Deanna Martin, an Australian lady, and dismantled her across 3 rounds. But it was it's on YouTube, like the full fights and stuff, like One Championship like to do. I thought I'd discuss her if you had heard of her, because she's just, I think in a few years' time you're going to see her pop up.
Brilliant.
Swedish 17-year-old, and she's jacked.
I'll do a bit of research, and we'll chat about her next time we speak. I haven't, to be honest, because I mean there's so many things going on at the moment. I have to kind of pick and choose, and I do watch all the events, so I will most likely have seen her fight in one, but I don't commit many names to memory because I've got limited hard drive space. I'm actually working on the Rodtang DJ War Room today, and I'm also going to do Sitajai against Alazov, the kickboxing tournament.
Yes.
I mean, what a tournament that has been, you know. And this One Championship event coming up at the end of March as well, 1X, the one that Rodtang and DJ are on. I mean, it's absolutely stacked with talent. You know, we've got John Wayne Parr fighting for Liang on it. You know, we've got
what happened there.
You know,
did you not get anything from that?
Yeah, I mean, we went back and forth. I went back and forth a little bit with the matchmakers, but it just stalled because I want them to put an offer forward to me. You know, I want them to tell me what they think I'm worth to the promotion, and they wanted me to tell them what I wanted to show up and fight. And you know, I can only play that back and forth tennis game a little bit of, how much do you want? Well, how much are you going to give me? How much do you want? And it kind of stalled and didn't get anywhere. Yeah. And then John Wayne Parr got COVID over Christmas and he was in hospital. I mean, it was serious. So I just kind of pulled back, started talking about having a couple of boxing matches or whatever. And then before I knew it, the match with Folayang was made. I mean, to be honest, I'm a very, very much an unknown commodity for John Wayne Parr. He doesn't know whether I'm in shape, whether I'm old and decrepit since the last time I fought. He has no idea. But what he does know, and what One Championship know, is that Folayang's on a losing streak, and it's the first time he's fighting Muay Thai. So really, what they've got is a celebration of John Wayne Parr closing out his Muay Thai career with his 100th win, and I don't blame him. Can't blame him at all for that. I have spoke to One Championship a few times recently. They actually invited me out to the the event on the 26th of March, but unfortunately, I can't make it this time. But I'll be working with One Championship in the future, either competing or commentating or something.
I was going to say, because selfish point of view, obviously want to see you compete again, because I always, when people ask me what's the best Dan Hardy fight to see, I give him 3 fights. I give him the Mike Swick fight.
Yep.
You schooled him because you hit him for 10 seconds and he was done for the whole fight. What's the I give him the Amir Sadala fight because you turned into a grappler. You just started double legging and I was like, what am I seeing here?
Well, the thing is, see, my goal for that one, when I fought Ludwig, that was the fight before. My goal for Ludwig was to win the fight because I needed to, because otherwise I was going to get released, right? And I knew that I had that left hook I could land. I could draw that attack out of him. But with Sadala, it was like, okay, I know I can beat this guy striking. I don't have to prove that to myself or to anybody else. But what I do want to show people is that I've been working on the rest of my game. I've been working hard with Drysdale and with Ricky Lundell on my ground game, and I wanted to show people 3 different takedowns. That was my goal.
And you did.
I did, yeah. It was just frustrating that was like the last time I had a run out, because like the next performance was going to be even better and even better.
You scheduled for Matt Brown, right? Straight after.
I was. Yeah, Matt Brown. It was
that still would be an amazing fight now.
still.
Yeah,
And I'd still take that fight as well. You know, where I spoke to the UFC and asked for that fight, but they matched him like way into the future against someone, and it was just odd. You know, just a bit of a.
Have you got any relationship with them at the moment, or is it just
the UFC?
Because I saw you on obviously MMA Hour, and you just said it's kind of they didn't explain everything to you, and it's very unfair. And I don't know specifics, I won't say it, but is there anything left like salvageable, or is it just kind of you've been kicked to the curb almost?
No, not really. No, I don't think so. I don't hear from anybody within the UFC. I mean, through the whole circumstance, I never ever heard from or spoke to Dana. But then, see, the thing is, there's different groups of people that work within the UFC. There's a very kind of socialite atmosphere within the UFC, and I'm not a social person, not at all. So when I go out to Fight Island or to a fight week or whatever, I land. I get taken to the airport, I get taken to the hotel, and then I go into my hotel room and I work. I research, I do interviews, and I prepare myself for the event. A lot of these boys are out playing golf with the producers and hanging out with people in the bar and stuff, and it's the schmoozing part I can't do. Yeah. Like on the same weekend that I had a disagreement with one of the PR staff, one of the other commentators broke a camera and injured a cameraman. But that went completely unsaid because he was able to pick up the phone and go straight to Dana and say, "Hey, sorry, my bad." And that was it. I mean, if I'd have had a number to reach Dana, maybe that would have helped. But the other thing that might have helped is to get some clarification over what happened with the Herb Dean thing. Because, I mean, still, the whole thing is that I approached him and it's not the case.
Yeah,
what I should have done is probably complain.
Even there's a video online, because the famous picture is you, like, pointing. And real quick, first ever video posted on my channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, blew up, mate. And I was saying, like, you're not mates with Jai Herbert. Stop putting this sort of thing out. It's nothing to do with being English. It's safety of the guy's unconscious getting smashed in the face for 4 additional and I do a couple podcasts with some guys, and every time Herb is now to me Steve Mazzagatti. Every time I see him, I'm like, oh. And he was shit at the weekend. Like in the main event, it's just he's just unsure. He's touching people. It's just very indecisive. And Jason Herzog and Mark Goddard are the two for me, because my whole thing is you should never see the ref. You should never ever see him. Whereas he's just always in shot. He's more, and he used to be the golden standard, and I hate that he is now. And the whole thing of Dana in the press conference after even said like, "Oh, I'll have to have a word with that." Like you did anything. And obviously I'm a Dan Hardy supporter. There's a lot of Dan Hardy, anti Dan Hardy people out there.
Loads.
Like yeah. But it's like.
It all got kind of mixed up a bit as well, because on the same weekend that I had that disagreement with Herb, there was the fighter on the UAE Warriors that shoved Mark Goddard.
Oh, so it's always something.
Right? Yeah. So when the question was put to Dana, and the soundbite that was taken out was, if you approach an official or blah blah blah. Like, first of all, immediately I removed myself from that because I didn't leave my desk. I didn't leave my desk at all. The screen that you can see me pointing over is my shield for COVID between me and the cage. Like that's like, he was over my desk. Like what I should have done really was complained immediately that he approached me while I was trying to do my job. And at least that would have maybe evened out the playing field. But the fact that people say it was anything to do with, first of all, I don't know Jai. I'd spoken to him a couple of times that week to interview him for the fights, but I don't know the guy. I like him. I like Trinaldo as well. I've been watching him for years.
Yeah.
But I was also saying the same thing when Murtazaliev was bashing the hell out of CB Dollaway.
Oh,
and I didn't know either of those guys. It was just what I'm seeing is one athlete taking unnecessary punches. Like I did a breakdown yesterday. I've done the war room for Ankalaev against Santos. Right now, when Ankalaev dropped Prachnio, he took 2 shots on the floor and the fight was done. And Herb was the referee and he jumped in and stopped it. Great stoppage.
Yeah.
When Herb was refereeing Santos against Błachowicz was dropped with a 2-piece combination, a right hook, left hand, knocked him out, bang, dropped on the floor. He took 25 hammer fists before the referee stopped it.
Do you go into this on the war room?
Yeah, I mean, it's just at the end of the war room. I'm like, and here come 25 hammer fists with nothing returning, to the point where like Jan's covering and moving, and then he just kind of goes limp. And I'm not saying he was hurt by that point, but not intelligently defending yourself for 5-10 punches is one thing. 25 is too many.
Yeah,
you know, and it's the inconsistency of it. It's the waving the fight off at the end of the round and not the end of the fight, like he did with Masvidal against Cowboy. Like Cowboy was dropped hard at the end of the first round. He was helped up and put on his stool by his corner team, which shouldn't be allowed. Referee should have not touched him at the end of that fight either. And Herb steadies him on his feet because he's not sure where he is.
Almost to justify his decision, isn't it?
It's just. It's the inconsistency of it all. That's the problem, and it's the inability to reflect on it. Like, you know, of course I'm friends with Goddard, but he's the harder on himself than any other referee I know, aside from maybe Leon Roberts, who retired after the Aldo Yan fight. Yeah, like, people don't realize that. Like, he
Goddard at the weekend.
Say that again.
Goddard at the weekend with Moicano.
Yeah,
30 seconds, or I'm calling it. And I was like, perfect. That's all you had to do, because everyone was saying it should be stopped. Hindsight, I think he made the right decision because Moicano looked great in the fifth for somehow. So it's those sort of decisions that make him the tier one. You know.
I mean, the way he handled it, was excellent. Personally, I still would have stopped that fight at the probably at the beginning of the fifth round, because so what you got to think is, first of all, Moicano took that on short notice. So he wasn't as prepared as he could have been for it. Second of all, it was a 5-round fight when really it should have been a 3-round fight because it was co-main event with nothing on the line. I understand keeping it 5 rounds for Fiziev, but when the opponent changed, it then just becomes a regular fight again. Yeah. So that fight could have quite easily been stopped. My other thing as well, right, is I'm a big fan of Moicano. What we may have seen is we got another 10 minutes out of Moicano that took 2 or 3 fights off his career. I would rather see the 2 or 3 fights at the end of his career than that extra 10 minutes of him getting beaten up by RDA. And I'm not saying that these guys can't maybe possibly turn it around, but there are certain things like an eye injury you have to be careful with. Like, what we don't want is a whole bunch of one-eyed MMA fighters in 10 years' time because the fights weren't stopped when they should have been. Like, eyesight is something that you don't get back. I say this to the boys at the gym, right? Like, wear a gum shield, right? Because wear a gum shield because you don't have to replace your teeth. But worst case scenario, you can replace your teeth, right? Mm-hmm. Can't replace your eyes. Mm-hmm. Like, we don't want guys to be like permanently injured, and we don't want to be shaving off fights at the end of their career for the sake of an additional round. Like, I mean, I'll chat with Goddard about it, and he stuck exactly to what he needed to do. Me personally, though, when the doctor said it was reasonable to stop it, I would have probably made that call myself. The corner team should have done, but these dudes are there for the paycheck. You know what I mean? They're getting additional money if they get the win. So why not hang on for another 5 minutes and keep their fingers crossed? Because it's not them that's only going to have one eye in a few years' time. You know?
I get you. Yeah, absolutely. And like, my final thing. Oh, go on.
Go on. It's a difficult situation, and of course, you know, I will always say, look, you know, the referees have got the final say, and they're the ones that are in the situation to make those calls. But we also need to make sure that on the outside we're keeping an eye on them and making sure they're making the right calls, keeping them accountable. And that's the downside, is that there is no accountability for the referees right now, or the judges. Like, why if we have a bad judging decision, can the media not request that those judges come and sit at the press conference and answer questions? Because if they're willing to sit cage side and judge people, they should be willing to sit at the press conference and be judged for their judgments.
Oh, Catterall Taylor in the boxing. How I felt sick.
Embarrassing.
I felt sick after that. Yeah. And I know you're friends with Nick Pete as well, and he did a whole Instagram story about it as well, because he was cage side for it. And it's, you know, listen to those boys for boxing. That's where I remember.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I love the Fight Disciples. And I saw Nick Pete's video as well. He was very upset by it. You know,
see it in his face. Yeah. Absolutely devastated for him. Yeah. And he's got no relationship specifically with the person. It's just to see that kind of, you know, that's a world championship. Imagine Darren Till going 5 rounds with Tyron Woodley, beats him 4 of them, and Tyron gets it's just the same thing. It's just mad.
Yeah.
My final thing for you is: are you at Cage Warriors next week? You commentating?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I'll be there. Okay. I can't miss Cage Warriors. I can't miss Vucenic against Hughes. I mean, what a fight it's going to be.
I spoke to Vucenic a couple months ago. On this, and he's jacked. He's like this right now. He looks super strong. He's saying he's got an extra inch on his punches essentially, and he's going to be starting knocking heads off. And he's just so pumped for this. And then you look at Paul Hughes, because if you just listen to Vucenic, you're like, well, he's going to decimate Paul Hughes. And then you listen to Paul Hughes talking, you're like, oh, he's going to decimate him. And I know you've spoken about. I was right behind Vucenic in the last fight when Charrier fought at York Hall. I think you're wearing that same hoodie, mate.
It probably was, yeah. Reptile boxing hoodie.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm there for this one as well. I'm bringing a few of my mates. So if I see you, I will shout at you.
Definitely, yeah.
Look for the full Reptile clothing line.
Yeah, man. Yeah. No, it's going to be. It's going to be a really good one. I mean, both. Not only are they both very, very skilled and conditioned and competitive, but they're also playing the psychological game very well. The whole thing, switching their Instagram photos, and I love it. I love it. It reminds me of the old Cage Warriors days when it was like this for every event. There was always someone arguing with somebody else, and it made the fights a bit more interesting. I mean, like you were talking about at the very start. Me against Matt Thorpe. Like the tension between us and the Northern Cartel. The guys at the Coliseum, and I mean, it was a lot of fun back in the day. But then I watched that event back. And I think I had 6 cornermen. I think he had 6 or 7 as well. And they were yelling abuse across the cage at one another as well. I mean, it's all good fun, but I love those. I love those storylines where there's real animosity, real needle. It's Amir Khan, Kell Brook. One of the most interesting build-ups to a boxing match I've seen in a long time, because I genuinely didn't know who was going to win. It was very closely matched, and the trash talk was great on both sides.
Yeah.
That's what you want from combat sports.
Are you cornering Adam as well in that one?
Adam's out. He broke his foot, unfortunately.
Oh no.
Yeah, so Adam's sidelined at the moment. He's getting that healed up, and he'll be back later in the year, moving up to bantamweight as well, which is much
I always
better.
wondered how he made the weight. There's not an ounce of body fat on Adam.
No. I don't mind guys, cutting weight to be in the right weight class, but my concern with Adam was that the last couple of weeks of training camp, he wasn't really switched on and aware, because he was so kind of drained. And I just don't want to see that in guys, especially when we're trying to impart important information for them.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to be much, much stronger at bantamweight. And then on the April card, I'll be there as well. April 1st and 2nd, we've got Dean Truman coming back to featherweight, and we've got Dan Hepworth on the card as well. So I will be cornering then.
Oh, perfect. I'll try and get up to Manchester for those ones as well.
They're going to be good.
Yeah, man. Well, hopefully I'll see you next week. That'd be great.
Definitely. You definitely will give me a shout.
Yeah, I haven't got a backstage pass, but I'll shout at you on the stage because it's at the end.
That's all right. So. It's a very intimate venue, so it's there's not much backstage by comparison, and I think that's one of the things that makes the Indigo such a good venue, is that you feel like you're in the cage with the fighters when they're competing.
For sure. I'll throw some full Reptile stickers at you.
Do that.
Thank you so much for your time, Dan. I really appreciate it, mate.
No worries, brother. We'll do this again sometime.
Perfect. Appreciate it. Have a nice day, mate.
All right, mate. Speak to you next week.
Cheers, dude.